It is often said that the only thing more captivating than a legend is the legend behind that legend. Today, we're going to delve into the hit animated series as well as the adventure that inspired it. But first, I'm going to have to ask all you critters out there to reach for your D20s and roll initiative, because this is Cartoon versus Campaign. Greetings fanboys and fangirls, I'm Erod and I'm the Blockbuster Buster, and I'm going to have to ask you to indulge me while I take care of a little bit of housekeeping. This video is intended to be a compare and contrast between the Legend of Vox Machina animated series and Campaign 1 of Critical Role. If you haven't seen those, I highly suggest you stop the video here, because there will be spoilers ahead. Secondly, while the word versus may imply competition, it is not my intention to prove that the Legend of Vox Machina cartoon is better than the campaign or vice versa. They're both great. This is simply intended to be a fun compare and contrast between the two. That is all. We clear on that? Also, I have already covered the backstory of the Legend of Vox Machina thoroughly in my Vox Machina Honest review, which you can check out on this channel. But just in case, here's the short version. The backstory. For those of you who don't know, The Legend of Vox Machina is based on a Dungeons & Dragons campaign, specifically one that was played by the cast of Critical Role. They started the campaign at home for fun and played on and off for 2 years, until they were approached by fellow actor and friend Felicia Day, who suggested they stream their game live on her Geek and Sundry Twitch channel, and the rest, as they say, is history. In this chapter of Cartoon vs. Campaign, I plan to compare the first 3 episodes of The Legend of Vox Machina with their corresponding episodes from Campaign 1 of Critical Role. So, without further ado, let's begin. The Terror of Tal'Dorei, Part 1. The first 2 episodes of The Legend of Vox Machina detail events that happened to Vox Machina pre-stream. If you're interested in a detailed account of these adventures before the cast started filming the show, you can check out the Critical Role video, The Story of Vox Machina, or the amazing Dark Horse comic book series, Vox Machina Origins. Alright, it's time to address the Dragonborn in the room, as any critter that's worth a salt will tell you that the biggest difference between the cartoon and the campaign is that Vox Machina is shy one member, Tiberius Stormwind, played by Orion Akaba. Tiberius was a Dragonborn sorcerer who traveled with Vox Machina from the home game all the way through the first 27 episodes of the stream. Now, as far as why he left, there's a lot of rumors and speculations online, but I don't entertain rumors, I embrace facts. And the only fact that the cast of Critical Role and Orion seem to agree on is that the decision to part ways was mutual. But the question remains, why did the creators decide to start the story here with the battle with Brimscythe? Something that happened halfway through the home game? Well, because it was the one home game adventure that had a strong connection to the stream, namely the 3rd story arc, the Chroma Conclave, which is due to be the 2nd season of the cartoon. But more on that later. Let's start comparing some of the more substantial differences between the 2 stories. In the cartoon, Vox Machina just waltzed into the palace to answer a help wanted ad. This is most definitely not the case in the campaign, where Sovereign Uriel is possessed by an evil entity, and no one is granted entry into the castle. Desperate for leads, Vox Machina gains an audience with one of the members of the Tal'Dorei Council, Sir Gregory Fince. Vox Machina goes to see Fince, only to find him dead. And that is all of Fince's involvement in the campaign. Suffice it to say, making him a potential suspect, voiced by the great Tony Hale, was a massive improvement. Fince's killer in the campaign is not Krieg, but the demonic minions of the actual big bad for this storyline. Our heroes dispatch the demons and then turn to the next person who might know what the hell is going on, General Krieg. Krieg is pretty much the same as he is in the cartoon. Nice, supportive, and quick to confirm all of Vox Machina's concerns. But all of his leads take our heroes to dead ends. Another big difference between the 2 stories is that the campaign is told entirely from Vox Machina's point of view, while the cartoon is told from multiple point of views. So we get to see the dragon Brimscythe multiple times before his final confrontation with Vox Machina. Hell, we even get to see Vox Machina make a very hasty attempt at slaying Brimscythe only to fail miserably, which leads to the blue beast decimating an entire village, at which point our heroes outright make the decision to kill the monster or die trying. In the campaign, they are not awarded such a choice, and thus we move on to episode 2.
The Terror of Taldore, Part 2.
In the cartoon, after a humiliating meeting with the Council of Taldore, Vex takes charge, delegates a strategy, and pretty much establishes herself as the de facto leader of the group. In the campaign, Vox Machina doesn't really have a leader. When faced with a problem, the group discusses it amongst themselves and comes up with a solution together. In the cartoon, the assignment of a definitive leader was done for the sake of pacing. Why Vex? Honestly, I think her leadership felt more organic, as she already plays the role of the more mature and responsible twin. In the campaign, Vex is just as irresponsible, silly, and reckless as the rest of the party. So Pike and Vax go to Gilmore's Glorious Goods, which is a must before any major adventure. Here we see a copy of Tusk Love, which is a running gag in Campaign 2 of Critical Role, which takes place 20 years after Vox Machina and follows a completely different group of adventurers called the Mighty Nine. What is Tusk Love? A smutty romance novel in the style of Twilight, which deals with a romance between a human girl and a male orc. Unfortunately, one of my favorite running gags from the campaign is not established here. That the reason Vox Machina gets discounts at Gilmore's Glorious Goods is not because Vax is very man-pretty, even though he is, but because the group advertises the store for free. So no matter where Vox Machina goes, what they achieve, who they save, what monster they kill, at the most awkward moment possible, one of them, usually Scanlan, will turn to whomever is within earshot and remind them to shop at Gilmore's Glorious Goods.
Welcome to Gilmore's Glorious Goods!
And so the party reassembles at General Krieg's house in both versions, but for different reasons. In the campaign, they do so because they know that the demon that is possessing Sovereign Uriel is onto them and they are desperate for allies. In the cartoon, Vex's primeval sense leads them to believe that Finns is the dragon in disguise, so they follow him to Krieg's house. Now, from this point, other than Krieg's house being empty and Finns being murdered in front of them, the events transpire pretty much the same way in both versions. Our heroes investigate and discover a portal that takes them to the dragon's hoard. Here they find 4 obsidian orbs that are going to be really important in Season 2. And then Krieg reveals himself to be the dragon. And yes, this is the first and only time we see the dragon Brimscythe in the campaign. All the while, he appears 4 times in the cartoon, which in my opinion is a vast improvement. The battle with the dragon proceeds pretty much the same way, except for one major difference. In the campaign, it is Vax who deals the killing blow, while in the cartoon it's Grog who kills the slimy turd. Personally, I like both versions of this battle, and you will never hear me complain about them adding an extra moment where we get to see Grog rage. After they leave the dragon's hoard, once again, our stories seriously diverge. In the cartoon, our heroes are awarded a place in the council and their own keep for slaying the dragon. In the campaign, they do a little bit more before they receive these awards. Finally making their way into the palace to confront Uriel, they discover that he's being manipulated by a treachery demon. The battle is tough, and while Vox Machina manages to slay the demon and restore the souls of the royal family, there is a great cost. Not only does Pike receive a scar over her left eye, but she is killed during the battle. Our heroes rush Pike's body to the nearest temple of Sarenrae, where the clerics work tirelessly to resurrect the tiny gnome. The ritual succeeds. Pike comes back to life, but the stress on her body is such that her hair turns from raven black to platinum white. For those of you keeping score at home, that's 2 members of Vox Machina whose hair changed color due to traumatic events. So after slaying a dragon, a demon, and nearly losing their cleric, does Vox Machina receive a place in the Taldore Council and their own keep, which they name Greyskull Keep. Obviously, they couldn't use that name in the cartoon because then Mattel would roll a crit. Episode 2 closes with a quick epilogue from the Briarwood's point of view. Obviously, this scene doesn't exist in the campaign as it is entirely told from Vox Machina's point of view. We don't meet the Briarwoods until much later, and with that, we move on to the next episode.
The Feast of Realms.
While the first 2 episodes of the cartoon deal with events that happened to Vox Machina before the stream, the rest of the season deal with events that happened to Vox Machina during the second story arc after they started streaming the campaign. They completely skipped Vox Machina's journey to the Underdark to rescue Lady Kima of Vord, as well as their quest to Vasselheim to dispose of the Horn of Kavarn. And why did they skip all that and go straight into the Briarwood arc? Well, to put it plainly, That first story arc in the stream heavily featured Tiberius Stormwind, and it's really hard to tell that story without him. If anything, this is even more reason for you to check out Critical Role Campaign 1. Alright, enough of that. Let's compare and contrast. In the campaign, Vax and Grog have an ongoing pranking contest. All of that is summarized in the cartoon with a quick friendly game of ball tag. Now, the first big difference between the cartoon and the campaign for this episode is that Pike is not there. In the campaign, Pike started to lose touch with her faith, so she opted to stay in the city of Vasselheim and help rebuild the Temple of Sarenrae to regain her holy connection. In the real world, Ashley Johnson wasn't there because she was in New York filming Blind Spot. Now, as far as why Pike was losing her connection to Sarenrae, we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. In the cartoon, Vox Machina is invited to the feast because they are part of the Tal'Dorei Council. In the campaign, they make it a point to go to the feast because they know the Briarwoods will be there. And how did they know that the Briarwoods would be there? To put it plainly, Percy just asked the Tal'Dorei Council if they had any dealings with the Briarwoods to inform him, so sure enough, once they get back from their adventure in Vasselheim, Seeker Assume visits Vox Machina at their keep and tells Percy, hey, we're having a feast and the Briarwoods are coming. It is at this moment that Vox Machina has a team meeting and Percy reveals everything about his backstory. How the Briarwoods killed his family, how he's been looking for revenge most of his life, how he had a dream that inspired him to build his gun, and how he keeps a revenge list carved into the barrels of his gun. And that there's a slight chance that he might be possessed by a demon. And why does he tell Vox Machina all of this right away? Because he wants their help enacting his revenge. You see, Percy tried to get revenge on his own, but failed. After a year of searching, the only person on his revenge list that he could find was Dr. Anna Ripley. But when he confronted her, her men captured him, beat the hell out of him, and threw him in a cell, which is where the rest of Vox Machina find him at the very beginning of the campaign. Percy feels that as a team, they can succeed where he failed alone. So, Vox Machina agrees to help him, and thus they prepare for their epic battle with the Briarwoods for an entire week. Yes, the party is a week away from the moment that they find out about it. Yeah, an entire week of Vox Machina running errands. I'm not gonna lie, that section is pretty tedious and a little bit boring. The day of the feast finally arrives, and knowing that the Briarwoods will be there and could potentially recognize him, Percy devises a plan. He magically disguises himself as Vax, while Scanlan turns the real Vax invisible, so our resident rogue can spy on the Briarwoods while they are staying at the palace. If something goes wrong, the safe word is Jenga. Obviously, that couldn't be the safe word in the cartoon because then Parker Brothers would roll a crit.
The safe word is Jenga.
Delilah's story during dinner is different in both versions. In the cartoon, she claims that the Rolos abdicated the throne because they were bored of ruling, while in the campaign, she says that they died of a plague and left the kingdom to them. I believe this change was made because in the cartoon, she can recognize Percy and wants to provoke him. All the while in the campaign, he's disguised as Vax and she has no idea who he is. Furthermore, in the cartoon, Vax actually gets to search the Briarwoods' room, where he finds evidence that they're trying to bring back the Whispered One. Vax does not get to search the room in the campaign. He follows the Briarwoods into the room while invisible, only to discover that the Briarwoods could see him all along. The rest of the scene pretty much transpires the same way in both versions. The Briarwoods paralyze Vax via hypnosis, Silas reveals himself to be a vampire, bites Vax, and our favorite handsome half-elf jumps out the window to escape. The one big difference is that in the campaign, Liam O'Brien legitimately thought that Vax was going to die in this scene, and so he shared what he believed were going to be Vax's final thoughts. And it is such a beautiful dramatic monologue that I wouldn't dare repeat it and butcher it here. It is just one of the many reasons why you should check out the campaign. Another big difference is that while in the cartoon Vox Machina hear the safe word and know exactly where to find Vax, in the campaign they have no idea where he is. So the party splits into two. The magic users that don't need weapons, namely Tiberius, Keyleth, and Scanlan, run upstairs to the Briarwoods' room, while the rest of the party that do need their weapons, namely Grog, Vex, and Percy, run downstairs to get their weapons. It is when they get there that they hear the commotion outside and know to go help Vax in the courtyard with the Briarwoods. In the campaign, there are a couple of more participants during the battle in the courtyard. Seeker Assume joins the fray, but he is charmed by Silas and is pretty much a non-factor for the rest of the battle. Another surprise combatant was the guest star for this session of the campaign, Kit Buss, who joins the battle as a tiefling wizard named Lilith. And it is so fortunate that they had an extra wizard, because early in the battle, Delilah deals 21 points of psychic damage to Tiberius, lowering his intelligence and charisma to 1, making him behave like your standard garden variety dumb lizard for the rest of the battle, and he's pretty much a non-factor. Yeah, Tiberius during these first few episodes of the Briarwood Arc, not as important. However, it is important to note that it is Scanlan who reaches Vax first and revives him using Cure Wounds. In the cartoon, it was Pike. In fact, they pretty much switched one for the other, which makes sense for Vox Machina to have their cleric with them during a major battle, while Scanlan distracts all the partygoers with a wonderful song about his favorite piece of jewelry.
Ew!
Also, all of Scanlan's songs in the cartoon are 100% original, while in the campaign they are parodies of popular songs, most of which Sam Riegel made up on the spot. The other big difference is that Delilah breaks Pike's symbol of the Everlight, which causes the cleric to start losing her connection to her faith. In the campaign, she starts losing that connection because she impulsively killed an enemy while he was unarmed and unconscious. The rest of the fight is pretty much spot on, except that the Briarwoods get away via teleport, as opposed to running away while Keyleth creates a wall of vines. In both versions, they make their escape on a horse and carriage. In the campaign, our heroes make the carriage crash by Keyleth making the ground slippery with sleet, and Percy blowing out one of their wheels with his gun. Unfortunately, after all of that effort, the Briarwoods still teleport away. In both versions, this is followed by Percy interrogating the Briarwoods' driver, Desmond, and shooting his hand off. The big difference in the two interrogations is that in the campaign, Percy's questions center around the fate of his siblings, as at this point in the story, he is unsure whether or not his brothers and sisters are still alive. Also, while in the cartoon, Vox Machina is alarmed by Percy's brutality towards this seemingly innocent man, in the campaign, they're okay with it. In fact, they are so okay with it, they allow Percy to take Desmond prisoner and keep him in a cell under Greyskull Keep. Yeah, I'm really glad they changed that. Now, on the cartoon, this is pretty much where Vox Machina's night ends. They are immediately arrested by the palace guards, who then bring them before the Tal'Dorei Council, where they are sentenced to house arrest.
How can you arrest a house?
In the campaign, after Percy blows Desmond's hand off, they just let them go. And Lilith, the tiefling wizard who they just met during the fight with the Briarwoods, comes with them because why not? First, they stop in the same temple of Sarenrae where they revived Pike to restore Tiberius' intelligence and treat all of Vax's wounds. It is during this scene that one of the clerics examines Vax and reassures him that he will not contract vampirism from the bite that Silas gave him. In the cartoon, this is summarized with one quick throwaway line.
I'm not turning into a vampire, am I? I withdraw the question.
And by the way, this is one of many moments during the campaign where our heroes plug Gilmore's Glorious Goods.
Enchanted curios and magical artifacts at discounted prices.
After they leave the Temple of Sarenrae, they're confronted by 3 bounty hunters who are there to collect Lilith. Because of something to do with her sister? I'm sorry, I really didn't understand this subplot. Anyway, the bounty hunters are comprised of their leader, the broker, an old lady with some magical abilities, and a guy in a mask. And Vox Machina then proceeds to obliterate these people. Percy empties all 6 shots from his pepper box into the broker's chest, killing him instantaneously, and then delivering one of his signature lines. Your soul is forfeit. Scanlan puts the old lady to sleep, Vex puts an arrow in her shoulder to make sure that she stays down, and then Tiberius takes out a knife, spins it like a buzzsaw, and slashes the old lady to death. Yeah, that was not groovy. This was not a very good episode for Tiberius. Anyway, the guy with the mask asks to be put out of his misery, and of course Vox Machina lets him go. And then, and only then, after they went to a party, picked a fight with a vampire and a necromancer, kidnapped a guy, went to church, and killed 2 bounty hunters in front of that church, and then, and only then, does Vox Machina call it a night. So, That concludes this segment of Cartoon vs. Campaign. Join me next week when I will be comparing episodes 4 through 6 of The Legend of Vox Machina with their corresponding episodes from Campaign 1 of Critical Role. See you then.